My name is Jennifer Taylor, and I am 32 years old. 10 years ago, I stood on a porch with my suitcase in one hand and my medical school ID in the other, while my parents shut the door in my face. They did not ask for proof. They did not ask why my brother's story sounded strange. They simply believed him when he said I had dropped out, wasted their money, and lied about still becoming a doctor. That single lie erased me from my family before I even had the chance to defend myself. They missed my residency graduation. They missed my wedding. They ignored every call I made until I finally stopped calling. This morning, while I was tying my surgical mask in the ER, a trauma alert came through. Male patient, severe crash, internal bleeding, possible spinal damage. When I stepped into the bay, I saw blood, broken glass, and the face of the man who had stolen 10 years from me. My brother was unconscious on the gurney, and my parents were standing behind him like ghosts from a life I had already buried. I saw my mother grip my father's hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her lips moved like she was praying or denying what was right in front of her. I did not care enough to guess which one. Then the nurse handed me the chart, and one brutal truth settled over the room. The daughter they threw away was now the only surgeon standing between their golden son and death. Before I tell you what he said, and what happened after I walked out, tell me, what time is it for you right now? Where are you watching from? And what is the weather like where you are? I'm curious to see how far this story will travel. The ER did not pause for my history. Blood pressure dropping, abdomen rigid, pupils reactive, breath sounds uneven. Nurses moved around me with practiced urgency, and that was the only thing that kept me from becoming a daughter again. I forced myself to be what I had trained to be, the attending trauma surgeon. Not the discarded child, not the sister who had cried in a bus station bathroom with $37 in her wallet. Not the woman whose graduation invitations came back marked return to sender. I looked at the monitor, then at the wound pattern, then at my brother's face. Ethan Taylor. Seeing his name on a hospital band felt like watching a curse become official. Prep OR2, I said, my voice calm enough to sound cruel. When the nurse cut open his shirt, I noticed the cracked expensive watch on his wrist. Of course he had kept the polished life. Of course the son who lied had been rewarded with dinners, holidays, and inheritance talks, while I learned how to survive on instant noodles and library couches. As we rolled him toward the OR, my father whispered my name. I did not stop. 10 years earlier, he had said, "You made your choice, Jennifer. Do not come back." I remembered my mother looking away when I begged her to call my school. I remembered Ethan standing behind them, pretending to be heartbroken while almost smiling. In the scrub room, hot water hit my hands, and another memory sharpened. I was 22, standing in my parents' kitchen while my father deleted his number from my phone. "Now you will learn what consequences feel like," he said. My mother stayed silent. Ethan leaned against the counter and said, "Maybe now she will stop acting like she is better than everyone." That night, I walked out with my textbooks in a trash bag because they had locked my suitcase in the garage. I slept in a laundromat and wondered if my life had ended before it had started. The OR doors opened and sterile light swallowed the past. Dr. Scott was waiting as backup, but I was the lead. He knew enough to watch me carefully, but not enough to speak. I needed that silence. The scan suggested massive internal bleeding. I called for suction, clamps, and blood. The first incision was clean. My hand did not shake until the scalpel touched skin, and for one dangerous second, I heard Ethan's old voice at a family party I had not been invited to. "My sister could not handle med school. Some people are not built for pressure." The scalpel paused for half a heartbeat. Half a heartbeat can kill a man on an operating table. Then I tightened my grip and cut. Could I have let him die? If the person who destroyed your family lay under your hands, would you save him? I looked at the blood, the torn tissue, the damage, and knew the answer. I would not become him. I would not become my parents. My revenge would not be dirty. It would be exact. So I saved him with the same hands he once called too weak to become a doctor. The surgery stretched for hours. His blood pressure crashed once and the room tightened around me. I found the bleed. I clamped it. I repaired what I could. I could not repair everything. The spinal injury was already there before he reached me. He might live, but he would not walk out of that hospital as the same man. That was not my revenge. That was impact, bone, nerve, and bad luck. Still, a cold part of me whispered that consequences had finally found him. When we closed, my gown was marked with his blood. I thought of my wedding day, when I kept glancing at the church door, hoping one of them might show up. I thought of the empty chairs I had paid for anyway. Then I dropped my gloves into the bin. "He is alive," I said. Nobody cheered. I had performed a miracle for people who once called me a failure. Now they would learn what that miracle cost. When I stepped into the hallway, my parents rushed toward me. For a second, the old instinct almost returned. Explain, comfort, shrink myself so they would not be upset. 10 years ago, I had been trained to swallow pain if it kept the peace. That girl was gone. My father looked thinner than I remembered, but not softer. My mother stared at my surgical cap, my badge, and my blood-stained gown, as if each detail struck her with a truth she should have checked a decade earlier. I stood still and let them look. I wanted them to feel the full weight of my existence, not as a daughter begging at their door, but as the surgeon who had just pulled their son back from death. "Jennifer," my father began, "is he alive?" I said. Critical, but alive. My mother covered her mouth. My father closed his eyes like he had been granted mercy. Then my mother reached for my arm. I stepped back before she touched me. The movement was small, but it wounded her. Good. Some wounds belong to the people who cause them. "Please," she whispered, "we need to talk." I looked past them. Nurses, residents, and waiting families were close enough to hear. I did not raise my voice. I did not need volume to make humiliation public. "You want to talk now?" I asked. Not when I called after my first anatomy exam, not when I left messages during residency, not when I mailed you an invitation to my wedding. Now, because the son you chose needed the daughter you erased. My father's face tightened. You thought what he told you to think," I said. "That was easier than checking, easier than calling the medical school, easier than believing me." My mother shook her head, tears spilling fast. "We did not know." I leaned closer. "You did not want to know." Her knees buckled. My father caught her, but she slid low enough that, for one frozen second, it looked like she was kneeling. People noticed. A nurse glanced over and quickly looked away. I saw my father realize strangers could hear what kind of parents they had been. 10 years ago, they made me stand on a porch while neighbors watched. 10 years later, they stood in a hospital hallway while strangers watched shame crawl across their faces. My mother clasped her hands together. "Please, Jennifer, please forgive us. We were wrong." I did not bend down. "This is a hospital," I said, "not a confessional. Your son's care team will update you when appropriate. I am removing myself from direct family communication after this because I will not let you turn my workplace into your apology stage." My father stared at me like he could not decide whether to command me or beg. "You cannot just walk away," he said. I laughed once, quietly. "You taught me how." A security officer approached, calm but visible. My parents noticed, and that small public correction did what no private conversation could have done. It made them look ordinary, not righteous, not betrayed. Just two people who had made a cruel choice and were now being managed like any other disturbance. I gave the officer a nod, then looked at my parents one last time. You will not follow me. You will not touch me. You will not call me your daughter in this building like you did not spend 10 years proving I was not one. My mother sobbed harder. My father whispered my name again, but it had no authority left. I turned away before they could see my hands shaking. Revenge does not always feel like victory. Sometimes it feels like walking away while every broken part of you wants to ask, why wasn't I enough? But I had asked that question for 10 years. I was done asking. Now they could live with the answer. I reached the staff room before the shaking became visible. I locked the door, leaned over the sink, and pressed my hands against the metal until the edge bit into my palms. I did not cry at first. I just breathed, like someone had wrapped a fist around my lungs. Then I saw my reflection in the mirror. Surgical cap, exhausted eyes, blood at my collar, and the faint white scar on the inside of my left wrist. Most people never noticed it. I noticed it every day. I got that scar during my second year of medical school, not because I wanted to die, but because I was working 3 jobs, studying all night, and living under a loneliness that made my own body feel like a locked room. I dropped a glass in my tiny apartment above a closed bakery and cut myself cleaning it up. The blood scared me because, for 1 second, I realized nobody would know if something happened to me. Nobody would call. Nobody would come. I wrapped the wound myself and went back to studying cardiovascular pathology with my hand throbbing under a towel. The next morning, I scored 96% on the exam. The people who called me weak never saw what strength had cost. My phone buzzed. Megan, my wife. The one person who had watched me rebuild myself and never once asked me to forgive people still holding the hammer. Her message was simple. I heard about the trauma case. Are you okay? I typed back. It was him. Ethan. I operated. He lived. A few seconds later, my phone rang. I did not answer. If I heard her voice, I would break in a way I could not afford inside a hospital. Instead, I sent one more message. I am not okay, but I am standing. I opened my locker. Behind spare scrubs was a brown envelope I had carried for years. Inside were my enrollment records, tuition receipts, graduation photos, returned invitations, unanswered emails, and one printed message from Ethan that arrived 2 years after I was disowned. It said, "You should thank me. Without me, you never would have learned how little they actually loved you." I had never shown it to my parents. For years, I told myself it would not matter. They had chosen not to believe me when belief could have saved us. But revenge is not always rage. Sometimes revenge is documentation. Sometimes it is showing people the receipt for the pain they purchased. I slid the message back into the envelope, then pulled out my wedding photo. Megan and I stood under a white arch, laughing. Behind us, 3 empty chairs were visible in the front row. I had asked the photographer not to edit them out. At the time, I thought I wanted proof that they had been invited. Now I understood the chairs had become witnesses. A knock came at the door. Dr. Scott stood outside. He did not enter like a savior or speak like a therapist. He looked at me like a colleague who had just done the impossible under unbearable pressure. "The board chair is here," he said. "They still want to finalize your promotion announcement this afternoon. I can delay it." I almost laughed. For months, I had been under consideration for director of trauma surgery. My parents had spent 10 years believing I had failed out of medical school. In less than an hour, the hospital board planned to announce that I would be leading one of the most demanding trauma programs in the state. "Do not delay it," I said. Dr. Scott studied my face. "You sure?" "No," I said, "but I earned it. I will not let them steal another milestone." That sentence steadied me. They had missed my graduation because of a lie. They had missed my wedding because of pride. They would not take this from me, too. I changed into clean scrubs, tucked the envelope under my arm, and stepped back into the hallway. Through the glass of the consultation room, I saw my mother hunched over tissues and my father standing stiffly, still trying to look in control. Before I went in, I asked myself one question. If the people who abandoned you finally learn the truth, do you owe them comfort? The answer came from the scar on my wrist, the empty chairs in my wedding photo, and every unanswered call. No, I owed them the truth. Comfort was something they had forfeited. Ethan woke up angry. That was the first thing ICU told me. Not grateful, not ashamed, angry. He was confused, in pain, demanding answers and asking why his legs felt wrong. I stood outside his room, listening to the machines and the controlled voices, then walked in with his chart in my hand and no softness on my face. His eyes found me slowly. Recognition came with a flinch. Jen? His voice was raw. What are you doing here? I am your surgeon, I said. He blinked hard. No, that is not possible. That seems to be the family motto today. His mouth tightened. Even half broken, Ethan still tried to defend the lie before he understood the truth. Where are Mom and Dad? In the consultation room. They know you are alive. His eyes shifted to the ceiling. My legs. Why can't I move them right? I kept my voice professional. You suffered a severe spinal injury during the crash. There is swelling and nerve trauma. It is too early to know the full outcome, but you may have permanent impairment. The sentence hit him harder than any accusation. His face changed from confusion to fear, then panic. No, I have meetings next week. I have a company. You have to fix it. I repaired the internal injuries that were killing you, I said. The spinal damage happened before you arrived. You are saying I might be crippled? I am saying you are alive because a surgeon you lied about for 10 years did her job. His eyes snapped back to mine. So that is what this is? You want me to thank you? No, I said. I want you to understand the difference between mercy and forgiveness. I gave you mercy because my oath required it. You do not get forgiveness because your body finally made you weak. Ethan swallowed, then tried a different mask. Tears gathered in his eyes too quickly, too perfectly. I had seen that performance before. Jen, I was young, he said. I was stupid. I did not think they would actually throw you out. That is a lie. He looked away. I opened the brown envelope and pulled out the printed message. 2 years after they disowned me, you sent me this. I read it slowly. You should thank me. Without me, you never would have learned how little they actually loved you. The nurse froze. Ethan's face drained of color. I was drunk, he whispered. You were honest. He tried to lift himself, failed, and gasped in pain. You kept that? I kept everything. His eyes sharpened with fear. What did you show them? Not enough yet. Jennifer, you do not understand what this will do. I understand exactly what truth does to liars. He gripped the bedsheet. My wife cannot know about this. There it was. Not, I am sorry. Not, I ruined your life. His first real concern was his image. Your wife deserves to know what kind of man she built a life with. I said. You cannot contact her. That would be harassment. I do not need to contact her. Your parents will. Or your own panic will. Men like you always confess by trying to control the room too tightly. He stared at me with naked hatred. You think you are better than me because you wear that coat? No, I said. I know I am better than you because when your life was in my hands, I did not lie. The door opened. My parents stood there, hesitant, destroyed, desperate. I had asked the nurse to allow them in after the medical update. I wanted them to hear the truth in Ethan's own room. My father looked at the envelope. "What is that?" "Proof," I said. Ethan's voice cracked. "Do not." I handed my father the printed message. He read it once, then again. My mother took it with shaking hands. Belief arrived too late to be useful. My father turned toward the bed. "You told us she quit." Ethan closed his eyes. I was angry. "You told us she was stealing money." "She always got everything," Ethan snapped, finally too cornered to perform regret. "You loved bragging about her. Jennifer this, Jennifer that. I was your son, and I was invisible." My mother made a broken sound. "So you made us throw her away?" Ethan's face twisted. "You did that." "I lied, yes. But you believed me because you wanted a reason to stop paying for her dream. Do not put it all on me." That was the moment my revenge became complete in a way I had not planned. I did not have to accuse them anymore. Ethan did it for me. He dragged the hidden rot into the open because selfish people cannot drown alone. My father staggered back. My mother looked at me, but I did not rescue her from the truth. I gathered the papers and slid them back into the envelope. "Now all of you know," I said. "And I am done being the only person who had to carry it." My father whispered, "Jennifer, please." "No," I said. He lied. "You chose. I survived. That is the whole story." Ethan stared at me with wet, furious eyes. "So what now? You came here to watch me suffer?" I stepped closer to the bed. "No, Ethan. I came here because you were dying. I saved you because I am a doctor. But now that you are alive, understand me clearly. Your legs, your company, your marriage, your reputation, those are consequences you will face without me softening the fall." He whispered, "You are cold." I leaned down just enough for him to see that I meant every word. "No, I am what you made after I removed the poison." Then I walked out while my parents stood frozen beside the bed and Ethan called my name like a man discovering that the door he slammed 10 years ago locked from the other side. My mother found me outside the hospital chapel. I had not gone in to pray. I had gone there because people whisper near chapels, and I needed a place where nobody would demand pieces of me. She approached slowly as if I were a wounded animal she now hoped would let her close. I saw the tremor in her hands. I saw 10 years on her face, but I did not let age become absolution. People grow older even when they do not grow kinder. "Jennifer," she said, "I read everything." I held the envelope against my side. "Then you know." "I know we failed you." Once, I would have given anything to hear that, but timing can turn medicine into poison. The apology arrived after the funeral of the relationship, and I had already mourned it. "You did not fail me like someone forgets an appointment," I said. "You abandoned me." She flinched. "I know." "No," I said. "You know the words. You do not know what they cost." She started crying again, but this time I felt tired, more than satisfied. "I called you from the laundromat the first night," I said. "I sat between two dryers because it was the only warm place I could find, and I called you 7 times. You turned your phone off." Her hand went to her mouth. "I called on my birthday. I called when I passed my boards. I called the night before my wedding because I thought maybe, if you heard my voice, you might remember I was your daughter. You did not answer, so do not tell me you failed me. Failing is accidental. What you did required repetition." She lowered herself onto the bench. "I thought if I answered, your father would—" "There it is," I said, still hiding behind him. Her head snapped up. "You chose silence because it was convenient. He chose anger because it made him feel righteous. Ethan chose lies because jealousy made him hungry. All three of you chose something. I was the only one who was not given a choice. My father appeared at the end of the hall, smaller than he had looked in the ER. I remembered him as a man who filled doorways and ended conversations by clearing his throat. Now he walked like the floor had become uncertain. "Jennifer," he said, "I need to say something." "You need to hear something first," I replied. "I will not be Ethan's long-term physician. I will not be his rehabilitation contact. I will not be his medical power of attorney. I will not manage his appointments. I will not become useful to this family now that the son you protected needs care." My mother's face crumpled. My father closed his eyes. I continued before they could crawl through the pause. "You trained me to survive without parents. Do not act shocked that I learned too well." My father's voice broke. I was wrong. Yes. I was cruel. Yes. I let pride make me a monster. I looked at him for a long second. No. Pride did not make you a monster. It gave you permission to become what you already wanted to be when I disappointed you. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. 10 years ago, he had words and I had tears. Now I had words, and he had nothing strong enough to stand against them. My mother reached for my sleeve. I stepped back. "Please," she whispered. "We are older now. Your father's heart is not good. I have been having dizzy spells. We cannot lose both our children." The manipulation was softer this time, wrapped in illness and fear, but I recognized the shape of it. "You lost me 10 years ago," I said. "You are only noticing now because Ethan can no longer stand in the space where I used to be." My father sat down heavily. A nurse passing by slowed, and the doctor in me noticed his color, his breathing, the way he pressed a hand to his chest. The daughter in me remembered the porch. I stepped closer, not as family, but as a physician in a public hallway. "If you are having chest pain, I will call a team." He looked up at me. "Would you treat me too?" I chose the truth. "I would make sure you received care," I said. "I would not hold your hand through it." My mother sobbed. My father covered his face. I let them. Then I gave them the final document from the envelope. A letter from my attorney stating that my parents and brother were not emergency contacts, beneficiaries, authorized decision-makers, or considered part of my legal family for any personal, medical, or financial matter. My wife Megan was listed in every place that mattered. My father read it with shaking hands. My mother whispered, "You removed us." I looked at her. "No. I made the paperwork match reality." That sentence broke her more than shouting would have. "Is there nothing we can do?" she asked. "There is one thing," I said. "Tell the truth. To Ethan's wife. To the relatives you let believe I was a failure. To every person who repeated your version of my life. I do not want a private apology that protects your public image. I want the lie buried where everyone can see the grave." My father stared at the floor. "That will destroy him." I nodded. "No, it will introduce him." The hospital board announcement happened at 4 o'clock. I almost skipped it. My brother was in ICU, my parents were unraveling in a consultation room, and Megan was driving toward the hospital whether I answered her calls or not. But I had promised myself one thing. I would not let my family steal another milestone. So I walked into the conference space with clean scrubs, steady hands, and the brown envelope locked in my office drawer. Dr. Scott stood near the podium. Colleagues clapped when my name was announced. Director of Trauma Surgery, Jennifer Taylor, MD. For a moment, I felt 22-year-old me standing behind my shoulder, still holding that trash bag of textbooks, still wondering where she was supposed to sleep. I wanted to tell her, "Here, this is where we were going." Then I saw my parents at the back of the room. Maybe they had followed the applause. Maybe they had seen the sign outside. Either way, They stood half hidden behind hospital staff, both stunned. My mother had one hand over her mouth. My father stared at the screen behind me, where my credentials filled a slide in clean black letters: medical school honors, surgical residency, trauma fellowship, research awards, leadership appointments. A decade of truth stood on that screen. I did not look away. Let them read. Let them count every year they missed. When I stepped up to speak, my voice did not tremble. "Thank you," I said. Trauma surgery teaches you that life can change in seconds. A crash, a fall, a choice, a delay, a lie. Sometimes the damage begins long before the patient reaches our doors. Our job is to face the damage honestly, act decisively, and never confuse saving a life with erasing consequences. A few people nodded, hearing only medicine. My parents heard the blade inside it. I saw my father lower his head. I saw my mother cry silently. Good. Let them learn that I could speak in rooms they once believed I would never enter. After the announcement, Megan found me near the elevators. She wrapped her arms around me, and I let myself lean into her for exactly 3 seconds before I remembered where we were. "I am proud of you," she whispered. That nearly broke me. Pride, offered without conditions, still had the power to undo me. "They are here," I said. "I know," she replied. "Your mother called me. She got my number from an old wedding invitation and begged me to convince you to talk." The old anger returned, clean and useful. Of course she did. Megan's face hardened. I did not call back. I blocked her. For the first time all day, I smiled. "Thank you." We were about to leave when an ICU nurse approached. Ethan was asking for me. Not the on-call physician. Me. I almost refused. Then I realized refusal would let him imagine he still had power. I went because I wanted the ending spoken clearly. Megan walked with me to the ICU doors, squeezed my hand, and waited outside. Ethan looked worse under the evening lights. Tubes and monitors made him look smaller, less like the golden sun and more like a man trapped inside the consequences of impact and ego. His wife, Claire, stood near the window with her arms folded. She recognized me, and her face told me she had learned something ugly. My parents sat in the corner like defendants waiting for sentencing. "I told Claire," my mother said before I asked. "I told her everything." Claire's eyes shone with fury. "Not at me, at Ethan." "He told me you were unstable," she said. "He told me you destroyed the family and ran away." I nodded once. That sounds like him. Ethan's mouth twisted. "Can everyone stop acting like I am the only villain here?" "No," Claire said sharply. "You do not get to distribute your guilt like party favors." Ethan looked at me. "You got what you wanted. They hate me. Claire is talking about leaving. The company board already heard about the crash and the investigation. If I cannot walk, I am finished. Are you happy?" There it was. The final attempt to make my truth the weapon instead of his lie. I stepped to the foot of the bed. "You are not finished because I told the truth," I said. "You are finished because your life was built on people not knowing it." "My children," he whispered. "Claire said she will not let me lie to them anymore." "Good." He stared at me. "That is all you have to say?" "No. I have one more thing. 10 years ago, you told a lie that made me homeless. You watched our parents erase me. You enjoyed it. Then you spent years repeating that lie because my absence made you look better. Today, I saved your life. Do not mistake that for a bridge between us. It was not a bridge. It was a boundary. I can do the right thing and still want nothing to do with you." Ethan's face crumpled. "Jen, please. I am scared." "I was scared too," I said. "In the laundromat, in the cheap apartment, at graduation, at my wedding. Fear did not make you kind to me, Do not expect yours to make me soft for you. My father made a low sound from the corner. Jennifer. He may never walk again. I turned to him. Then you can finally take care of the child you chose. The room went silent. Ethan's eyes widened as the meaning sank in. I was not coming home. I was not becoming the responsible daughter who fixed the family after the favorite son broke. They had wanted me gone when I needed them. Now they could not summon me back because need had changed sides. Claire picked up her purse. I am taking the kids to my sister's tonight, she said to Ethan. Rehab, lawyers, the company. We will discuss later, but I am done living inside stories you write for yourself. Ethan reached toward her with the hand that still obeyed him. She stepped away. Watching him lose her was quiet, devastating, and exactly what truth does when it enters a house built from lies. My mother stood suddenly, swaying. Jennifer, she begged, please do not leave like this. I looked at her. There is no good way to leave people who only recognize you when they need something. We love you, she whispered. I shook my head. You love the version of me who might forgive you and make this hurt less. You do not know the woman who survived you. My father's voice was barely audible. What do we do now? I glanced at Ethan, at my mother's grief, at Claire's fury, and at the family that had once been the center of my world. You live with each other, I said. That is the punishment you gave me. Now it is yours. I walked out before anyone could answer. Megan was waiting beyond the ICU doors. She opened her arms, and this time I did not limit myself to 3 seconds. Behind the doors, my old family was still calling my name, but it sounded far away, like a language I had forgotten how to speak. A week later, the truth spread faster than Ethan's lie ever had. My father sent a message to relatives admitting they had disowned me based on false accusations. My mother mailed apologies I did not open. Claire filed for separation and temporary custody, while Ethan was transferred to a long-term rehabilitation facility. His company placed him on indefinite leave after financial irregularities surfaced during the board's review. My parents tried to list me as a family contact for his rehab paperwork. I declined in writing with one sentence: I am not available for this role. Months later, my mother came to the hospital with a folder. Inside were copies of every correction she had sent to relatives, old family friends, and people who had once whispered about me. She had written the truth in plain language. Ethan lied. We believed him. Jennifer did not fail. We failed her. At the bottom was a letter addressed to me. I did not open it. Is this enough? She asked. No, I said. But it is finally honest. Hope flickered across her face, and I extinguished it before it could grow roots. Honesty does not buy access to my life. It only stops the lie from spreading. She nodded slowly. Will you ever forgive me? I thought about the porch, the laundromat, the scar, the empty chairs at my wedding. Then I looked at my mother and told her the truth I had earned. I do not need to forgive you to be free of you. She cried quietly. Maybe she had finally learned that her tears were not instructions I had to follow. I walked past her toward the trauma wing, where alarms were sounding and someone else's life depended on my hands. I did not look back. That evening, I went home to Megan. We ate dinner on the balcony while rain tapped against the railing. My phone stayed silent. No desperate voicemails. No family emergency disguised as love. Just rain, warm food, and the woman who had chosen me without needing a tragedy to remind her I mattered. For the first time in 10 years, I understood the real revenge. They had thrown me out to make me disappear, and instead I became unforgettable. They lost a daughter, a doctor, a wife, a future, and the one person strong enough to save them from the consequences of their own choices. I lost a family that never deserved the power it had over me. And when the final door closed behind me, I did not knock again.
We are grateful to have you here with us. This video is completely fictional and made only for entertainment, education, and reflective storytelling. We hope it reminds you that revenge does not always need anger, noise, or confrontation. Sometimes it looks like healing quietly, succeeding patiently, and becoming unreachable to those who once control your pain.